this is your first time joining, welcome. This is episode 007 of the Doc This 24 and 12 series, where we're interviewing 24 amazing artists, filmmakers, and content creators over the next 12 months and bringing the best of that to you. This week, we are talking to OSCAR BOYSON. OSCAR is the director out of New York who started cutting his teeth working with YouTube influencer and trendsetter Casey Neistat. OSCAR's most recent work, Future of Cities, caught my eye and got me thinking about what attracts people to content on social and where storytelling is going in this forum.
Can you give me a snapshot in, like 30 seconds or so, 30, 60 seconds, a snapshot of your history and how you are where you are right now?
Sure. I grew up in a very small town in Maine. I always was making movies when the Mini DV and Final Cut Pro kind of technology, nonlinear editing systems arrived. Got hooked, wanted to make films. I went to college in Chicago, continued to kind of make films. Always wanted to live in New York. My first day in New York, I got a job on Craigslist working for Casey and Van Neistat. And I didn't really understand what they were doing at the time because I wanted to work for a David Fincher or a Jim Jarmusch. Did everything for them. The culmination of that experience being the Neistat Brothers, which was a show for HBO, independently financed, and then we sold it to HBO. I stopped working for them and had a bit of a hang up because I didn't really know how to use what I'd learned with them, which was doing everything from legal to cleaning the floor. And I took a little break on filmmaking, and then I kind of found it again, but sort of decided I would try every job. And so I worked in so many different capacities. Producing, you can kind of move up the quickest because there's no technical skills required. So I started producing and ADing, again, in a variety of different projects, from commercials to music videos to features. From that point on, I've kind of made a feature as producer each year and was able to kind of wean out of producing commercials and anything else really and start to direct stuff that I think, using producer head and producer know-how, I could kind of identify projects where I felt like I'd be able to do a job I was proud of. And when you work on good stuff that doesn't cost that much, you get hooked on making things instead of waiting around for things. And you very quickly start to say, I'd rather take no fee, put the whole budget on the screen and have no headache, than take a giant fee and have a giant headache and make something that nobody will ever see, potentially. Or it'll only get seen in a version that I hate, and I'm not proud of at all.
Can you talk to me about that transition from producer to director and tangible steps? I mean, how do you make that jump?
It's not like people just ask you to direct one day. And I think I realized that over time. Every year or so, I'd try a personal project as director. I think when you have producing experience, it's easy to convince yourself that you don't need certain things. Oh, we can cut that. I know that's not worth it, et cetera, et cetera. And then you kind of haven't supported the director version of yourself, and you're not very proud with what you make. And that's really discouraging for any filmmaker, or at least for me, to make something that you're not super proud of. You need the confidence at the beginning. This is worth it. This is going to be great. You need that, I think, in order to push on. But when it doesn't turn out great, it's hard to get back on your feet and do it again right after. I just started to realize that the only way I'd be directing more work was to make stuff on my own. And once you start making more and more things, it's easier to ask people to have some confidence in you as a director. So the big one, and it kind of happened like three things at the same time, but the first video I did for Artsy last year about the Venice Biennale came to me as a producer. Hey, do you want to produce and pitch some directors? And I could just see exactly what they wanted. And I had experience shooting in Italy. I just said, I'll pitch some directors, but I would love to pitch myself, and just kind of convince them that I was the guy. So there was some luck involved, but also just good timing. And if you just keep making things, then you have more things that you can kind of point to and say, look, I've done this, or I can do that. And then, yeah, you develop that confidence along with the relationships for more work to come your way.
I kind of want to talk about your storytelling skills and how you kind of perceive yourself as a storyteller, and kind of, or what you feel is your strength in that.
I read a lot and watch a lot of movies. I think with the nice part about these smaller projects is you don't quite feel that thing that I think a lot of people feel with feature films, which is, if this isn't a hit, I'm fucked for life, like I'll never work in this town again if my movie doesn't make its money back, or if it's not a hit, if it doesn't get into Cannes. And it's like, yikes, that's a lot. That is a lot of pressure. And the longer these projects take, like, it just gets more and more and more make or break, So doing these smaller videos, if you're done with one in a few weeks, and you move on to the next thing. And I think that's very liberating to try things out. There's something cool about the internet where if you create this context, you can be very, very nonlinear, and people will forgive you for it if there's coherence stylistically, or with the voiceover, or with music. So these little videos have given me a lot of confidence, and just try something different, try something weird, and to put them out and see how people like them very quickly. You get a little validation that, again, when you're putting out a movie that takes a year to make and another year to release, that can take a while. The whole process gets slowed down. The hard part is there's all this information out there. Who's gonna actually take the time to organize it and decode it? And I kind of realized, like, I'm not making big fancy music videos or commercials, but I've always loved reading and learning. And if you want to, anybody can go out there and decode all this information into a coherent signal, right? And say something with it. It's all there, but it's hard work, and it's not as sexy as, making 20 grand in a day with a supermodel on a big set where everybody's got fancy catering. But it's more fun. And that fashion commercial, it's not going to get watched in a year. It's going to be very short, its run, Whereas if you actually take all this information and organize it for the rest of the world, and synthesize this, it into something coherent that people understand, then they're going to, whenever someone asks them a question about whatever subject you're exploring, they're just going to send your video as the answer. And then your video starts to have some legs until someone does it better. And I don't think that a lot of people are really taking the time, and this is happening with journalism too, to say, you know what, we don't need to crank out an article every day. We don't need to do a video every day. Let's just make
The Future of Cities.
One.
I watched it from beginning to end. I totally got how you pieced it together. I totally got kind of the mentality behind it. You did a great job of just taking abstract work, abstract kind of grabs from various filmmakers and documentarians throughout the world, and just piecing it together and making sense of it, which isn't easy. So I just want to say that to you, because I was just like, this is a great piece, and then kind of further look into more of your work. So I have to say, I'm really honored to be able to talk to you and learn kind of and hear about the stuff that you've done and what you're doing. And I love the process from transitioning from producer to director. I think your mentality and your philosophy is spot on. No, I'll be honest with you, and this is the thing and I hear you with the conflict between the sexier kind of what is calling out in the world's kind of perspective, and I mean that in the most general of terms, and the documentary work, the storytelling work, the deciphering, decoding, and telling people kind of something that's feeding them on a deeper level, both mentally, spiritually, physically, whatever. For me, like, I think that is the highest calling in our field at some level. I really do. And that's the whole point of me kind of doing this and reaching out and wanting to turn what I'm doing right now, turn it into something where I can kind of make a living off of doing this and connecting with people like you and putting that message out there and telling a better story and improving the quality and life of people versus just feeding the machine, feeding the machine. So I can't agree more.
With brands too, I know, again, maybe what we grew up with, it was like selling out, but in the same way that you're seeing brands get involved with cities in a way that's helping the people and these private-public collaborations, I think it's happening with video too. And if you can deliver something where they don't have to get too much clearance in order to approve it, if you can work with that smaller budget where like they can green light smaller numbers and you can get a lot of freedom. I've been able to have some really great collaborations with brands by kind of saying, well, I can make it work with this, but being upfront about the expectation that, hey, I'm making this kind of about me now. This isn't just me doing your brand a service. We're doing something different. And increasingly, it seems like the brands that are ahead of the curve are interested in that. They know that making a video that's just designed to sell their product, kids watching YouTube videos call bullshit. They know it smells bad very quickly. So I think that I can see that being a big part of the future as far as the projects that I'm trying to do too.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm doing at some level with, I work in social media agency, so we do try to find storytelling through the brand and embed the brand into the storytelling without making it seem too much of a manipulated world. And to your point, like all the cars are the same cars in these commercials, like we try to push back on the client and say, no, that's not going to benefit you, like let's try to balance this out, but it is part of the reality. But I think, your storytelling skills and your narrative and your understanding of the internet, I'm telling you, as a director, you have a bright future in that regard, because if you start to seek that out and work down that path, like it's hard to find directors that get it. It's hard to find directors that get the social space. You know what I mean? Because so many of them are aiming for what is currently, and I firmly believe it won't be forever. But so many of them are aiming for what is currently the god, which is a commercial. But what we do in social, so much more fun, so much more interactive with the brand and giving life to it, and also you have the ability to insert yourself in there, which it kind of goes with what you're saying. So I mean,
yeah, and like, man, doing 20, 30, 40 versions of a commercial is draining on your energy, whereas like I did a little thing for Instagram last week and I didn't even have to get it approved. It was just like, all right, I'm done. I edited it on my phone. That's it. And then you get to make more things instead of getting kind of bogged down in the process. And I get it. I have lots of friends who, again, like you're saying, the dream is the commercial. And I also have so much confidence that the people, like if you're always exercising kind of every muscle, like this is the muscle where I just make a movie on my phone. This is the muscle where I make a movie with just archival footage. This is the muscle where I'm working with YouTubers and just traveling by myself. This is the muscle where I have a crew of 100 people, I did all those things this year. And I think the people who are doing all of them, you'll always be able to get a job. Whereas the people who get too used to doing one, it's gonna be tough when the industry pivots and you only know how to do that one thing. And as much as I love like the old school model where you have so many people who are so good at exactly what they do and they all do one thing, it's not efficient and companies are realizing that it's not economically efficient either. I mean, it hasn't been when it comes to movies for a long time, which is why our industry is so subsidized. But I always encourage people to just, hey, you don't need to like make these projects that can only be done with $1 million people and $1 million. If you can tell a little story on your phone with no money, like you'll always be okay.
You know, I guess the question that comes to my mind is the future. I mean, in a lucrative, and not that, you know, I don't want to turn it too strongly towards money, but in a lucrative sense, are you able to I mean, sounds like you're turning out a lot of things. Are these things that you're turning out are they projects on the side? Are they becoming more prominent projects? Are you finding a way to monetize them? Or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, for me, I don't really do very many projects where, you know, people love to get into this frame of, I really want to do commercials to make money. And I get it, but it's not as good as it sounds. And because, you know, yes, you make an insane day rate when you do a commercial, but you get that rate because the expectation is that you're going to be available and you're going to continue to be available for the next one. You know, unless you're like Wes Anderson or something, like a handful of guys who actually can just say, I want to do a commercial, find me one. Most people, you kind of got to be committed to it. And you get paid that much because you're constantly writing treatments that you don't get any money on, you know? And so I haven't really found a groove doing that stuff that makes me very happy. What Casey, my old boss and friend and neighbor down the hall, was always very good at was finding these jobs where the budget was just enough to make some money and do a good job, but not so much that we would have people looking over our shoulder the whole way, you know? And so I've kind of tried to find like I don't have his platform, so I can't do quite that, but I have not figured out a way to monetize over the internet in terms of like turning on ads or self-distributing and asking people to pay. But I have worked with brands to make internet content in a way that's been satisfying for me, and the budgets have been enough to do the kind of stuff that I want to do.
I heard you talk about, you said happy. Well, I loved you said that basically it sounds to me like a lot of what drives you in your decision making roots in happiness. And I'm curious to ask, like, what about this work makes you happy? How do you define happy, and where does that cost benefit, you know, ratio in a sense of happiness and staying and feeding yourself?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say I'm very good with money, even though I've managed budgets before. And I think I don't have a family. I don't have to provide for anybody, which I hope I can someday, but for now I don't. I think I just look at it in this way where I feel like every opportunity you get to make the work that you want to make, you can either put the money in your pocket or you can put it on the screen. And if you're putting it on the screen, you're investing it in yourself, because a year from now, you might not be able to just travel wherever you want, take whatever job you want. You know, something might happen which requires you to stay where you are or provide for somebody else. Something might happen which affects the choices you make as far as which jobs you're going to take. And when that happens, you want to be the best version of yourself creatively, right? You want to have evolved as much as possible so that when you do sit down and take a full-time job, you're getting hired to be you. That's where the happiness comes in, is making the best work you possibly can and feeling like the people who are involved in it have some equity, feeling like, you know, from producing as much as I have too, I have pretty strong feelings about paying people and scaling the fees and being really upfront about what we have to work with, and often basically talking people out of the job first. And if they're still standing and they still want to do it, then hey, you're my guy or you're my girl. We're doing this because I told you what it is and you know what it is and you still want to do it. So now we can have fun. And now we're all here for the right reason, right? The project I did with Josh and Benny Safdie, which I'm super excited about, it's a feature film, probably be out next year. We had an incredible crew working the coldest winter months, you know, and working really long days. And I you know, I would say the same thing about Greta Gerwig on Frances Ha, but Robert Pattinson on this film. He just set the bar, and everybody knew that he was working just as hard as them, if not harder, and not making a crazy payday, working for scale as well. And it was just like, when you feel that, I think everybody feels more proud of the work. They will go the extra mile, and creating an environment where everybody's there because they want to be. I know it's a luxury, but if you can do it, that makes me really happy too.
Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to kind of share in closing?
I really want to come back to Detroit, and I was only there for a day in Detroit, but I just really felt an energy. It's easy to feel that way when you got a day full of new people and new stories, but thinking about the circumstances that built the city versus the ones that tore it apart, and the way that city is reimagining itself right now, I think is great. And my hope is to, you know, this video was really important to me. I had a few conversations, like with the New York Times, for instance, about putting it out on their platform, and they wanted like a 30-day exclusive, and I just can't stand it when these media outlets want to do things like exclusives, because I don't know, it made me feel bad for them that they wanted that. The idea was to push it out organically and get feedback from people. What do you think? You know, oh, it's too fast. I know. Okay, cool. I'm working on a slower, more in-depth version. I want to, and to show that there's an audience for this stuff. And if we keep making YouTube videos as we go along, pursuing urban stories and stories about future urbanization in a longer format, a format that would work on television, then the internet videos, which are they're a marketing campaign for the longer thing. And my fears about kids who don't watch TV not wanting to watch this stuff, I think we'd kind of convince them, because they're the ones saying it's too fast. Hopefully by the time the show would premiere, they're ready to watch it. They're excited to watch it. So my hope moving forward is to keep telling these stories and build on this, and kind of do the small homegrown thing and a bigger thing at the same time, and let the two processes inform each other. So I'm hoping also to collaborate with as many storytellers and documentary filmmakers and journalists and urban planners and architects as possible. And I guess I'm not really saying that much, but I wanted to set up this project and give it a little context as for how I imagine it functioning and pushing and getting me closer to the next thing, which is, you know, an iteration of the future of cities where we're able to slow it down, go in deeper, and add some production value here and there too. I'd really like to make something that, you know, 1 minute it is as homegrown as the video that you saw, and then the next minute we've we've built a model of a city with visual effects, and we're showing you what it could look like with 5 different plans. Or, you know, maybe we build a set on a stage to show you what the corner of Canal and Broadway looked like in 1870 or something. You know, I think I've never seen a show where you're kind of seeing both DIY and the amazing things that a larger crew can do. So that's sort of, I see this as this kind of pilot test video to build on, and I'm excited to have found cities as a topic where it seems appropriate to kind of go in both directions and reveal the strengths and limitations of both.
Friends, followers, and artists, thank you so much for listening. I love this work, and I love it when I can pass it on to people to learn from. Coming up in our next episode is Alex Laura. Alex is a director with a powerful story behind the passion of his work, so be sure to tune in.